Well, it's lesson 4. We're having a look. Here was a 1. Or here was Amanda's little portfolio. So it describes her projects where you could link. She'll actually link to her GitHub for these projects, which is great. Link to her LinkedIn page as well as to her main GitHub. She got a working contact form. A little bit light on the content, actually. Here was another one that was pretty good, maybe a little light in terms of some of the content I wanted to see. But Justin, he actually used Angular for this, which I'll talk about. You can do for bonus marks. It's not required. Using filler content is not recommended. He lost marks for this, for not actually writing proper content. But this is kind of the idea. I actually built out a little sample for you. Here's the kind of thing I would like to see. A little 4 or 5 page portfolio. I explained the technology that I've used here. Some links. I wouldn't necessarily link to your personal Facebook page, but linking to GitHub and your LinkedIn page would be a very good idea. A bit about you. Some links to some of your projects that you've done in different courses, anything you're proud of that you think you want to show off that might help you get a job. You want to list here, what kinds of things can you do? What types of work are you interested in? And a contact form. You don't actually have to get the contact form to work. If you do, there's bonus marks for it. There's some marks just for creating the form and getting it working. Okay. So you should have a minimum of 5 pages, home, about, project, services, and contact. You don't need more than that, okay? Put some actual content in that will help you sell yourself, okay, to a potential employer. We'll use Express to set all this up using the Express generator, which we're going to do today. It's really simple. Okay. The generator will create some folders. It'll pre-build folders for your client-side JavaScript, your CSS, your images. So you can just use those existing folders that'll get auto-generated for you for storing those public assets. You'll want a shared header and footer. We'll look at how to do that today, similar to how we would have done it in PHP. We'll create a separate header file, separate footer file, and we'll just link them in to our individual pages. You will want to get your site running either on Azure or on Heroku. We'll try to do that today. I think I actually walked through it last week. We'll maybe do it again today at the end of class, so everyone is comfortable with doing that. You'll want to use GitHub, so you'll be making regular commits to GitHub and then deploying to Azure or Heroku. So it's actually a fairly simple site to do, and the Express generator makes it really easy. You probably have to write a very minimal amount of JavaScript code. Okay. In terms of the front end, you're free to do your own CSS. You're also free to use a template or use a framework. Okay, whatever you want to do to make it look good. What's your site? Lots of opportunities for bonus marks. If you want to implement AngularJS on the front end, you want to teach yourself how to do it, fill your boots. If you get your contact form to actually send an email, give you bonus marks. There are lots of NPM packages you can find that you could implement to do that. So if you find one, you can get it working, give you bonus marks. Okay. I'll also give you bonus marks for creating an external document and linking to it in the portfolio. What do I mean by an external document? Something that might include wireframes and a little bit of a style guide. So I created this really simple one here with my typography, colors, styles, very basic wireframes, and a sitemap, right? So this is a useful thing to be producing when we're developing applications, right? It's a value add for our clients. They can take this, they could do additional branding with this. Also helpful if some other designer gets brought into the job to do more, that at least they know they've got the raw tools of what they're working with. So you don't have to create this, but I would suggest it's not a bad idea. You can link to it somewhere in the portfolio, and I'll give you bonus marks if you choose to do it. I'll also give you a couple bonus marks if you want to run this on an actual domain name. So rather than running it under Rich's portfolio project.azuresites.com, take your free domain name that you get with your GitHub student pack and register, Chad Clark. I think they give you a .me domain for free with the GitHub student pack. So use that and run your portfolio on an actual domain rather than a subdomain of Heroku or Azure. If you do that, there's no charge if you use, because you do get one free domain from Namecheap with the GitHub student pack. I'll give you bonus marks if you do that. Okay. So all you need to do, you don't need to zip it. I just want a private Git repository for your labs last week. Some people are still giving me public Git repositories. If your Git repository is public, I'm going to deduct some marks. Okay, this is a major project worth 20%. Your code should not be public. It should be private, and I should get an invitation to it. Okay, I think everybody should know how to do that by now. We've been doing it long enough. If you don't, then you need to come and see me so you can be sure on how to do that. And then a couple marks for deploying it, 4 marks for getting it running on Azure, Heroku, or some other cloud service. You get access to other cloud services with your Git student pack. You have AWS credits. You get DigitalOcean credits as well. They will all run your site. So use any server you want. So for next week, all I really want to see is this. You have to have used the generator to set your site up. Okay, and it automatically builds a default homepage for you with writing no code at all. A couple commands with the command line, you have a working homepage. So by next Tuesday, what I want to see is that you've set the site up, you've pushed it to GitHub, and you've made a minimum of 3 commits to GitHub. And I don't mean 3 commits like next Tuesday night at 11:45. Just show me you're actively working on the site. It doesn't have to be finished. It has to be started. Okay. And you also should have connected your repository up to one of the cloud hosts. So again, it doesn't have to run. There can be errors as long as they can see the site's in progress for next Tuesday. So all I need for next Tuesday is a link to your GitHub, your private repository that has a minimum of 3 commits between now and then, as well as a link to the live site that you'll be running it on. That's it. So next week, basically, you get 4 marks if it's done. Couple marks for the version control, couple marks for getting it installed and running on CloudHost. That's it. Then you have another week to finish this. Okay. So what we're going to do today, we're going to go ahead and use this Express Generator tool to build the site in class that we're going to work on every week, like we've done in the past, where we built the site and kept adding on. And then I'm also going to give you a small lab that will be due Monday night. But doing the lab will be good practice for getting the portfolio done. You do the lab, the portfolio is going to be pretty easy. Most of the work you're going to have on the portfolio is really just doing your design and putting in the content. This is not heavy lifting with Node, really. The generator does all the heavy lifting for us. So today we'll just learn how it works. Are there any questions about the requirements or what I'm asking you to do? So hopefully in a couple weeks, everybody has, by Valentine's Day, everybody can go into an interview and say, here's my portfolio. It's built on Node.js. It's running on a cloud server, right? So I can do these things. If you need somebody to do this stuff, I know how to do it. Okay, so there's 2 submission links on Blackboard. Part 1 for next week and part 2 for the week after. Okay, so all I suggest is in this next week, get it set up and start working on it. You can finish it the following week. There won't be a lab in this class next week. Okay, so you won't have anything else to do at home. Okay. Well, let's jump into I'm going to go back into our lesson 4 folder. So what we want to talk about today is Express. I've put some slides up here. There's really not too much we need to know. I'll just point out a couple things. So Express, we used Connect last week. Express sits on top of Connect. So the code we use, and Express is what we're going to use to actually run our web server from now on in all our classes. It'll handle all the URL routing. It'll load different views that manages all our configuration. Will be handled by this Express, which is an NPM package we just install, like we did with Connect. Okay. So the code is almost identical to what we did last week with Connect. The only difference is instead of installing and requiring the Connect package, we'll install and require the Express package, and we'll create a new Express application. But the use command, the listen command, all that stuff's the same as what we were doing last week and what you did in your lab. Okay. So it's got that same request, response, and next parameters in all of these functions. One important thing we do need to talk about is we've got this notion of what are called HTTP verbs. Anybody ever heard that expression before, an HTTP verb? I see one nod. Can you fill the rest of us in on what that means?
Jesse mentioned it's a different HTTP method, right?
Yeah, so a verb is really just means a different HTTP method. So what HTTP methods do we know of so far? We've pretty much only ever worked with 2 different HTTP methods. Yeah, so far we've used post and get, right? So most of our requests we use get. Occasionally when we're submitting a form, we use post. Can you think of what other HTTP methods or verbs we might want to use besides just get and post? Yeah, we'll use delete. Now, strangely enough, there's no HTTP verb or method called update. We use a couple of different ones that are kind of mean the same thing as update. So I just mosey on over for a minute. I'm just going to click on this. I gave you the link to the official Express homepage. So let's have a look at what's here for a minute. The document, this page is really good. It's really clean and simple and easy to find stuff, which I like. And they have a few really simple examples, which we'll go through together shortly. But inside of the documentation, which is this API reference, so here are the different methods that Express supports. It actually, we've got get and post in this list, but it actually supports all of these other methods too, many of which obviously are common in web applications, things like subscribe or checkout. So we can call any of these functions because they actually describe what it is the user's doing and then route them to a particular page in our application based on those methods. So notice there's no update here. There's get, there's post, there's delete. Anybody have an idea which of these methods? There's actually 2 methods that we use instead of the word update. Patch is one. Good guess. The other one also starts with a P. Yeah, put is the other one. So later on, we're going to write functions. So basically, these map to our 4 create, read, update, delete operations, right? We use post for creating data, get for reading data, delete for delete, and put for update. So we'll typically see these when we build APIs. These will be typically the methods that we see. And that's what we're going to do later on in the course, is we won't use all those methods, but Express supports all of them. So let's think about how this works for a minute. Let's say we have a URL like, let's say we have a URL like this. So we've got this URL in our application. There's 2 different types of HTTP methods we might run at that URL. What 2 methods might we run? and what would happen in each case. Okay, so what would happen when we write a post method at this URL? What will we be doing? Yeah, we're probably processing a form submission, right? And saving to the database. What would be the other method that might happen at that same URL? So what will happen when we have a GET request at that URL? Okay, what would a user expect to see in their browser if they execute a GET request at that URL? Yeah, we're probably going to. So in our application code, we can have two different types of requests that go to the same URL, and we're going to do different things depending if it's a GET or post. If it's a GET request, we want to give them the form. If it's a post request, they've already gotten the form and filled it out, so we want to process it. So our code eventually, we're not there yet, but it will eventually look kind of something like this in terms of what these handlers look like. Let me go into maybe. So for example, here we have a GET handler at the URL /drinks/add. So when we have a GET request at /add, we want to display this page or view called add drink. We then have to also handle a post request at the same URL. But we're not going to do the same thing. We're not going to display the form. We've already shown them the form and the user submitted it and done a post. So now we're going to talk to our database and save the information that came into that request. So this is sort of where we're going with this model. So it's important that we get clear that we've got the different HTTP methods available to us. Make sense so far? That's kind of like the 1,000-foot view of what we're going to be doing and how Express will work. Okay, now Express has some really useful stuff on here. So we're going to actually make two separate applications today. The first one we're going to do, we're just going to use the Express code manually and they have a little simple hello world example. We're going to do that in first part, and then in the second part, we're going to use their generator tool, which will build out a whole kind of mini website as a starter template for us. And that's what we'll do from now on. We'll do it in our lab, we'll do it in our portfolio, and we'll work with that same application from here on after, as we'll use their generator, but not yet. So if you haven't done so already, if you're in lesson 4, open up the official site, which will take you here to the home page. And once you're here, if you go to the Getting Started and Hello World example, rather than me walking through this one with you, I want you guys to try this one on your own. I can come around the room and help if you get stuck, but they give you all the commands that you need. Okay. Now, they say call this my app. I suggest you call it lesson 4 part 1. And I want you to create a folder inside of wherever you've been doing your node stuff. So I'll go into my folder. We've got lesson 3 from last week. Make a lesson 4 folder. And inside, make another one called lesson 4 part 1. And inside of here, I want you to follow the instructions to create a package.json, install Express, and try their little hello world example. And you should be able to get it to run in your browser at localhost 3000. Should print out on a web page, should print out hello world. So go through the instructions here. They give you the code. They tell you how to launch it. and see if you can get it to work. Feel free to ask some questions. I'll give you about 10 minutes to try this. So if you're watching the video stream later at home, there's going to be 10 minutes where not much is happening because YouTube doesn't let me pause and restart. So just fast forward for the next 10 minutes. So you need your command prompt to get started. First command, right, is you use the npm init. If you install it with --save, then you can track the package.json. All right, good. So you're doing npm init. Good.
You have to do that, like, you can't put it in the package or anything.
No, you can like drop it in.
Like, you know, from literally, like, I want to save something, so I don't want it to be a dependency, I want it to be a different dependency. I'm not starting to understand it.
Yeah, they didn't say to do --save. It works with that,
Especially when you're sharing, because like.
but when we review it,
Package.
I'll explain it to the class after. So here's what happens. If you don't do --save, it still works on your computer, right? But let's say now you want to work with them today, you need your code. Okay? Node module gets really big sometimes, right? You install a lot of packages, but it's large. So usually if we push our code up to GitHub, we don't want to include all of the node modules. Then it gets really big. Problem is, if you don't say --save will work on your computer, then let's say you create a gig ignore. So the node module, you put it up to GitHub, right? And then you say, okay, I'm gonna figure out he downloads the copy of it. If you don't use --save, you don't use node modules, when he goes to run it, he's gonna get an error saying cannot find module express. So if you don't upload the modules, like you use --save, right, your package.json will say appendix unexpressed. So then all he needs to do before he starts, you just need to npm install. npm install looks at package.json that says, oh, I need express and I need all these other things. And it will download all of the packages in this run it on. Yes. Right? So it reads what's in here in what version. So that way, if someone is here, you don't have to copy everything in node modules. We just do it in there, or somebody else sees it when I'm running it again, install that list and says, okay, I need all of those things. So, but without doing minus save, it's not the code. Have that code modules folder, he'll get all kinds of errors. So think of it this way, I've been a marketer with projects, right? So if you all use different packages, and you put in I want you all to make all those projects. Yeah.
Google Translate good enough.
All right, it's in the world. Good.
UK. Yeah.
Okay, good.
Is there any way to install that put into the development dependencies? That was like an
It's save dash dev minus save dash dev.
Oh, so NPM install node.
Say okay.
I don't know, it's dash dev or just dash dev?
Dash save minus dev. Okay, you gotta work them? All right, so now in your browser, just go to localhost 3000. And let's make sure it says hello world. Whoops, just localhost colon 3000, no space. You just have a space in
I
there.
can get the hello world, but it's like it was pointing at the index file. There's a JS on me. Index.js file. It's running.
Go back to your command prompt. Try calling it app.js. Looks for that as a keyword.
Yeah, that's like, I did this one.
Okay, I'm gonna run through this real quick and then we'll take a break. Okay. And then Keyshawn asked a really good question about using the minus save option that we should talk about for a minute. So all I'll do here is open up my command prompt. So I'll first initialize npm, so it'll create a package.json for me. So now I have package.json. So minus save is going to add express to package.json. Now their instructions didn't include minus save. It's always a good idea to use minus save. How come? Right. So let's say I've got to mark 25 projects from everybody. Everybody, you all go out and find different NPM packages for your project, right? If I'm going to run your project on my local machine, I'm going to download your code off GitHub. Either you have to upload your whole node modules folder, which may become massive, and then I have to spend all my time and bandwidth downloading everybody's, or you can exclude node modules, but by adding it to package.json, if I download Artem's project and you've listed dependencies in package.json, before I run it, if I just type npm install, it will read your package.json and install all the dependencies that I need without you having to upload them and me having to download them. So now I'll just copy this code. And make a quick, it said to call this file app.js. App.js, when we use Express, that's typically the name of the startup file. So I'll just paste in my code and save it. And now I could use NodeMon to start it up. Oh, it's looking for index.js. Interesting. So now I'm running app.js, and I should be able to load it. So we can handle requests in the root, and it will send that response. So this is kind of similar to what we did last week with Connect. So when we have a get handler in our root file, we're going to send that response to the browser.
And we still need NodeMon.
I don't have to, only if I want to change it and have it restart. If I don't care about making changes and restarting it, then I could just start it this way. I could just do it. I could just do app, and that would work. So it's still working, but if I make changes, it won't automatically restart and show my changes. I'd have to stop and restart. Yeah, same thing. So I'm going to use NodeMon because I don't want to stop and restart all the time. NodeMon's much more efficient. So we should be in the habit of using -- save when we're installing our dependencies. Are there any questions about our little hello world example?
Why do we create measure? We can't just slash.
Because that's the root page. So if we go anywhere else, so we haven't told the application what to do with that URL. The slash just means the root.
So this time here we can create any page.
Yeah, so that's what we'll do. We're going to create, just like we did last week with hello, goodbye, we're going to do the same thing. We have to specify exactly which URL paths are allowed. Okay. So just kind of like in this other example I showed you, that wasn't it. So in this file, these are all the URLs that we're allowing. But anything else, we'll generate a 404. So we specify the URLs that our app is going to use. Okay. Oops. Okay, it's 4 o'clock, so I think this is a good place for us to take a pause. So when we come back, we're going to look at using the Express generator, which is going to do a whole bunch of stuff for us. And we'll start to get an actual site set up. So let's take a 10-minute break here.